times before, but it's been a little while since he was last up here. Every month we ask our storytellers a question for introduction, and this month we asked, what is your favorite invention and why? And Carl's answer was the El Camino car, because no matter what you drive, you should always drive it like it's an El Camino. Carl is going to be joining us on stage tonight with his story, What Science Taught Me About Being a Future Husband. Carl, come to the stage, please.
It's been a while since I've been here. In case you don't know my story, although it's probably obvious from just looking at me, I'm the guy who's really, really into tax accounting. And before I fell in love with tax accounting, my first love was science. This is probably because my dad's a scientist. Interesting thing about having a dad who's a scientist is, you know, when you're a child, you think your parents know everything, but you reach a certain age and you sort of realize that your parents can't answer all of your questions to your satisfaction. But when your dad is a PhD in biochemistry, is well-read in math, physics, astronomy, art, history, was in the Air Force, applied for the Apollo space program, your dad never stops being able to answer all of your questions. Your dad just simply knows everything. Family dinners at my house were a little different. They were sort of less about how was your day, did you make the hockey team, and more kind of like a GMAT prep course. Before you could eat, you had to answer questions like, okay, imagine the world is 1 meter closer to the sun, how long would the year be? And I learned to answer these kinds of questions with, Dad, I'm only 5 years old. Eventually, my parents got divorced, and Dad is a scientist. Their divorce was kind of the most rational, drama-free kind of divorce, and I never saw them fight. They split the property equally. My dad paid child support until we were like all 25 years old. When my mother got remarried, my dad was invited to my mother's wedding, and when my dad got remarried, my mother was invited to my dad's wedding. My mother and her new husband, they were always welcome at my father's mother's house, Christmas, Easter, whenever. And my father's mother, my grandmother, she always treated my mother's new husband kind of like this long lost son. So I was sort of lucky that, my scientist father sort of taught me, when I became an adult, sort of how to handle breakups in relationships. So, again, I always tried to deal with them sort of drama-free and kind of, rationally, and if there was any communally acquired property, we'd try to split it up equally, like, you give me the futon and you can have my tie collection because I know how much you're maybe hoping the whole Annie Hall look comes back in style. And, people got that reference. But it was another scientist that sort of taught me not how to deal with breakups, but how to actually stay in a relationship, how to kind of be maybe the husband that I should be. Some family friends of my dad, Peter and Sharon, and Peter was a scientist like my dad, but he also eventually got his MBA and went into hospital administration. And Sharon was kind of a free spirit, and one day Sharon was at the mall and there was a kiosk and it was offering ear piercing for 50% off. So she called her husband Peter at work and said, could I get my ears pierced? Now you have to understand this was like the early 1970s, and in the early 1970s only two kinds of women got their ears pierced, whores and Cher. And Cher was kind of pushing the envelope out for middle-aged women everywhere. And Peter said, I'm a hospital administrator, I have to be this prim, proper, respectable man, and I can't be known as the hospital administrator with the wife with pierced ears. So no one's going to give me a budget if I'm known as that, so you can't get your ears pierced. And then Sharon was like, okay, I understand your feelings, thank you. She hung up and she got her ears pierced anyways. And a few hours later, Sharon was kind of feeling very guilty, and so she called Peter again at the office, and she said, look, I disobeyed you, I got my ears pierced. And then Peter's like, well, I'm not very happy. Now I'm going to be known as the hospital administrator with the wife with the pierced ears, and no one's ever going to give me a budget. So, the conversation sort of ended in a frosty way, the way married people, end conversations, I guess, on the phone. And so Sharon sort of spent the rest of the afternoon sort of watching the clock, sort of waiting for Peter to come home, sort of knowing when he comes home, there's going to be a bit of a row. So, the clock's ticking, tick, 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 tick. 6 o'clock sort of rolls around. Peter usually comes home, and he doesn't come home at 6. And then, 6:30 passes, and 7, and Peter is still not home. And now Sharon's getting kind of worried because, maybe Peter's really, really mad. And about 7:30, Peter finally sort of rolls into home, and Sharon is kind of bracing herself for a bit of a fight, a bit of a confrontation, and Peter says, look, I'm late because I missed my train, and I stopped and I got this. And out of his pocket, he produced a jewelry box, and in the jewelry box was a pair of earrings for pierced ears. And I heard my father tell my mother this story when I was a little boy, and I sort of thought, that story makes perfect sense, and that's the kind of husband I want to be when I grow up. That in relationships, what really matters is the woman you love, and you can state your preferences and your desires, but if change comes, you have to sort of embrace the change for the woman you love. And I never actually did eventually get married, but I've got a beautiful girlfriend. She's here in the audience today. She's wearing glasses or something. I recognize her if I saw her. I guess for clarification, she did get her ears pierced a long time before we met, so that kind of conversation train has left the station. A sad kind of postscript to the story. Peter unfortunately died of cancer a few years ago, and at his funeral, I told his wife Sharon, I told her about overhearing the earring story and how much of all the stories I've heard in my life, how that story has sort of changed me and who I am or who I want to be. Thank you.